I know many people, and probably you do too, maybe every listener does, um, where they don't have like a wide social circle. They're kind of introverted, but they seem incredibly connected to people, to beings, to life, and it's different than kind of an accumulation model. I used to think way back before the pandemic, when I was first hearing about an epidemic of loneliness and how powerful social connection can be in different clinical conditions as a part of healing modality. And I kept thinking it can't possibly just be a numbers game. Like I only have 3 friends, I need 18. It must be some inner sense of belonging, of connection. And that I think is the difference between loneliness and solitude, that people might not look like they're, way social beings, but within they have such a powerful sense of connection. I think it's also important not to see something like loneliness as an enemy, like something we have to get rid of, but maybe we need to change our relationship to it. I think everybody gets yearning. We want something other than what we've got. And that's a human trait. The question is, what do we do with that? And do we then declare, I've nothing? Like nothing is good enough and I'm the only one. That's a problem. Both, it's unlikely we have absolutely nothing, but we may have nothing much we pay attention to or practice gratitude toward, and it feels like nothing. And it's not ever the case that we're the only one. Being able to tune into the condition of others is very helpful. And also, it also can be helpful to do something like a gratitude recollection so that our minds don't only dwell in what we don't have or we feel we need. Um, and that way, loneliness may come, but it's not this kind of long lasting, determining event, that makes us make choices that are kind of strange and harmful. And there's something about helping somebody, even if it seems like a really small little thing. Um, it connects us to something inside ourselves, something inside ourselves that's like more whole, more complete, and it's a genuine meeting when it's coming from the right place. Like the last in-person class I taught before the pandemic was in New York City, and I just gotten back there. It was in March, earlyish March, and things were really rough in New York. A lot of people were getting sick and so much anxiety, just tremendous anxiety. And I was teaching in a place where the speaker sits with the audience until they get up on the stage. And so sitting next to this woman who was like super, super, super anxious. And I said to her, well, there's certain breathing techniques, as there are, that are sometimes very effective in kind of cooling out our nervous system, and just helping us be calmer. And the trick to that, by the way, is not that complicated. And there are many ways of doing it, but as long as your out breath is longer than your in breath, that's what will often happen. So I said, well, there are these breathing techniques, and she wasn't interested at all. And I said, well, there are these meditation techniques, like loving kindness, which is one that actually helps us connect to others, even if we're sitting there alone. And she wasn't interested. So then I looked at her and I said, is there anyone you can help? She lit up. She just got radiant. And she said, oh, I have an elderly neighbor. Maybe I could slip a note under her door and offer to go shopping for her. And I thought, look at that. That's very interesting. Not to overlook that. Because sometimes we think I can't do enough, or it's not bold enough, it's not big enough, but it makes a difference to us as well as to the other person. If we feel just exhausted and we feel, I can't believe I have to face this alone, or I'm the only one who's ever suffered in such a way, it's much more painful. And it's also not true. So we're bearing the burden of this kind of manufactured world, whereas to recognize that it's not just me, this is part of human condition, or everyone does make mistakes, or or something like that. It's not really the same thing as misery loves company. It's more like, oh, I'm not bearing this all alone. And I think the corollary of that is life has not forgotten me. I still belong. I'm still a part of a bigger whole. And as bad as things can get in what's happening around us and within us, there's something really just so relieving about that sense of connection to others, and so important that we remember it, because that is what is true. There's something about this research scientist Barbara Fredrickson. They actually call it the Fredrickson broaden and build theory, which is that if we foster things like love and kindness, connection, generosity, gratitude, our perspective broadens, it opens. It's like the difference between feeling like you're stuck in a dark room with a door closed and just having it open. Like, you don't know exactly what's out there, but you go, whoa. And it's something Barbara always tells me, which I find so weird, that I question her all the time, is that when people cultivate these states, they found that their peripheral vision actually gets better, right? Everything opens, it expands. I think that's so strange, but she swears by it. And then there's the build part of it, the broaden and build theory. Like, build means inner resources. You don't feel so depleted. You don't feel so exhausted. If you're meeting joy, you remember to take it in. If you're meeting sorrow, you feel a little fortified. You don't feel like this is like, you can't take one more thing. It's very important to have that sense of inner resource. And there are many ways we develop it, including very powerfully through a sense of connection, not being so lonely. And I think some of the science says like 3 to 5 friends, but really, I just don't think so. It's not my experience of people, of life. And I think there are also these micro connections, where we remember to thank somebody, or we look them in the eye instead of looking through them. And there's a certain kind of fulfillment and sense of resourcing that happens from that. And so I think that shouldn't be ignored as we go chasing for, the magic number. I think it's the quality of our attention plus the quality of our connection, because if we're not present, if we're not listening, if we're not really looking at somebody, we're not really taking them in for that moment, then for one thing, we're not open to surprise. We've categorized somebody already, and we're not really there. And so I don't think we get the fulfillment of that sense of connection. So attention, like, how are we paying attention, and what are we paying attention to? Sometimes, say, the way we look at ourselves, we're pretty fixated on the mistakes we've made and the problems we have, and we don't spend a moment just like taking in the joy, and so too it can be with others. And so I think the quality of connection is more important than the quantity, and I think the quality is very much affected by how we pay attention. I think there are different angles to that. One is, how comfortable do you feel being vulnerable or revealing something? I don't mean that we have to reveal everything in every situation. I mean, sometimes it's really the wrong context. But if you feel that you're somehow living a persona or something that's not quite true with this particular circle of people, you might take a little baby steps and test that. There's so much interest these days in being vulnerable, and the power of that and how strong that really is. It just means being honest in a way and allowing oneself to be seen. So that's a certain level. And then the other part is, I often, urge people question, what are the particular values of this particular group of friends? And first of all, sometimes there's a particular motive, like, that group is getting together, and it's fine when the activity and the level of self revelation is relevant to that particular context. But there are other times, like I think of so many people who've come to talk to me through the years because something really bad happened in their life, really painful, and their friends were kind of like, that makes me uncomfortable to be around you. And one woman actually said to me, she had a terrible, terrible thing happen. Uh, and she said, "My friends all have golden lives. Nothing ever goes wrong for them," which I didn't believe for a moment. And she said, "But now I'm the symbol of life gone awry, and I make them very uncomfortable." Um, and that would be worth questioning if that's the ethic that is drawing us together. Maybe that can shift in some way that's more real and more relevant to what life actually looks like, which is we go up and we go down, and we can hang in there with one another, in all those circumstances.